بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
Assalamu alaikum. It is Monday, the 24th of October 2022, and in our series Reflections on the Holy Quran, this is broadcast number 367. And these days we have been discussing the words of the second chapter, verse 105 of the second chapter of the Holy Quran. And this is the sixth broadcast in that subseries. These broadcasts are brought to you by the Lahore Ahmadiyya community. This community was a department of the Lahore Ahmadiyya community called LAISA, Lahore Ahmadiyya School of Education in Religion. The Ahmadiyya community was established by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, who taught that although other Muslims say that after the Holy Prophet Muhammad another prophet can come, this is incorrect, because the Holy Quran says that the Holy Prophet was Khatamun Nabiyyin, and the Holy Prophet explained that by saying, La Nabiya Badi, there is no prophet after me. And he also said that although other Muslims say that some prophetic revelation like Ayah Rajam and Surah Balayat have been missed out from the Holy Quran, this is incorrect, because God has promised protection, his own protection, for what he revealed in the Holy Quran. So nothing that he revealed could have been missed out. Similarly, he said that other Muslims say that some verses of the Holy Quran are abrogated. This is untrue. No verse was, is, or ever shall be abrogated. And he pointed out that jihad is a duty of every single Muslim. But jihad, as defined by the Holy Prophet Muhammad, who said, while returning from fighting, that Muslims are returning from the minor jihad to the major jihad, and he said that the major jihad is jihad bin nafs, a struggle, a jihad with your own soul. And Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad insisted that although other Muslims say that the order of precedence of our sources is that Hadith comes first and then the Quran, he said this is wrong. The Holy Quran, being the word of God, comes first, and then Sunnah, and then Hadith, and then other things like Ijma and Ijtihad and so on. And further, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad said that the Holy Prophet has said that if one reciter of the Kalima says to another reciter of the Kalima that you are a kafir, a heretic, then it's the person saying it who becomes that heretic. So, with that, let us go to the verse of the Holy Quran that we are going to look at, as I said. This is verse 105 of Al-Baqarah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ما يود الذين كفروا من أهل الكتاب ولا المشركين أن ينزل عليكم من خير من ربكم والله يختص برحمته من يشاء والله ذو الفضل العظيم. Neither those who disbelieve from among the people of the book, nor the polytheists, like that any good should be sent down to you from your Lord. And Allah chooses whom He pleases for His mercy. And Allah is the Lord of mighty grace. So today we look at the words alaykum min khair. Or actually, I was going to say something, but because we didn't do it in the Urdu part, I will not do that. So let us go to my notes. If I can find them. There we are. So, as I said, the first expression rather than word we are going to look at is alaykum. And it's an expression consisting of two parts, alay and kum. Kum is a pronoun meaning you, and alay means for or to. So, and then we have the word min, which is again a preposition, any. And the last word is khairin. And we look at this word in a bit more detail. The root kha, ya, ra. That root occurs in the Holy Quran 196 times. And based on that root are 5 words. 178 times we find the word khair, and 10 times we find the word khairat, and 4 times we find the word ikhtara. Actually, ikhtara. So let us look at what it means. Let me get back to, just give me 1 second. I have to flick back in my notes to the beginning. Where are we? Here we are. Okay. The root itself, kha, ya, ra, or al-khayru, it refers to something which everyone likes and appreciates. For example, wisdom, justice, blessings, etc. So, of course, when you go to court, you want justice. No one goes to court hoping that they're not going to get justice. And it is the opposite of asharru. Asharru. And in fact, this can be looked at in two ways. How shall I put it? Well, there can be two types. One is absolute, something that everyone absolutely likes and will like. Okay. So, for example, the Holy Prophet said this about heavens, Jannah. That khair is not khair after which follows fire. And that shar, or that bad thing, is not shar after which you receive the heavens. So, sometimes what may seem like, or what is in this world pleasing and what people would like, it could be that in the hereafter it leads to a punishment, or the alternative also applies. I mean, the example I usually give is that, someone's leg has become gangrenous and a surgeon removes it. In a way, it's shar. No one likes having half their leg or their foot removed and having to hobble about. But after that, their life is saved. So that there are some things which are absolute in their effect. But there are other things which are not absolute. Or it may be that, not absolute in the sense that it may be that for one person, they represent khair and goodness and something that is good and pleasing. But for another person, they have the opposite effect. You have two people. We have Abu Sufyan, a very rich man. And we have Hazrat Usman Raziyallahu Ta'ala anhu, again a very rich man, a Muslim. Now, Abu Sufyan spends all his wealth on trying to oppose Islam, on trying to harm the Holy Prophet Muhammad, and so on. So his wealth has become something bad for him, because what he is using it for is going to lead to bad consequences for him, if not in this world, then in the hereafter. But then on the other hand, you have Hazrat Usman Raziyallahu Ta'ala. Muslims are having difficulty finding drinking water, because one well that has good drinking water, sweet drinking water, is owned by a Jew who's charging extortionate rates. So he buys that well. And then he doesn't start selling water to Muslims cheaply, but he gives it to the Muslim state, to the Islamic State, and says, there you are. I bought it, but it's now your property. Everyone can drink from it free of charge. So it's the same thing. It's wealth. Hazrat Usman has it and Abu Sufyan has it. For one person, it's khair. And it's means of khair for lots of people. For the other person, it's become harmful. It all depends in many ways about how you use something. You can take another example. Knowledge is regarded as something good. So a person have a knowledge of, I don't know, microbiology or microorganisms or something, and they use it. And they use it to find cure for, I don't know, smallpox and the common cold and, high blood pressure and sugar and, and so on. Now, for that person, because he's using his knowledge and developing his or her knowledge to benefit humanity, that's a source of khair. But another person, he has the same knowledge, but he uses it to create germs for germ warfare, to kill the enemies of his country or, whatever you want to call it, his people, his country, etc. But nevertheless, he's destroying and killing human beings. But there's one thing that you have to remember. Whatever it is, whether it is wealth, whether it is knowledge, whatever it is, they have to be acquired by lawful means. You cannot sort of, supposing you have a neighbor and he dies and his son is in Australia or something, and you grab that man's land, and before the son can get to the UK from Australia, you sell it, and then you give half the proceeds to charity, I don't know, to a food bank or Citizens Advice Bureau or whatever. And then you say, oh, look, I sold this plot and I didn't need to give half the money to charity in this way. What a good man I am. This is khair. No, it's not. Because you did not lawfully acquire that money. You usurped someone else's right. I've given one example, but I mean, the same thing applies, to use of labor, etc. If you don't properly pay your workers. But it's not just a question of money. If you don't allow your workers the appropriate rest periods, this is the whole concept of the 5 Islamic prayers. That people who are working or doing business or have a shop or whatever it is, they must close it. for half an hour or so to give their workers time away from that business for rest and recuperation. And interestingly, that idea was implemented by EU legislation. I guess that now that UK has left EU, that will be cancelled and workers will be required to do whatever kind of work it is, whether back-breaking or not, from morning until night for very little money. And then having done that, these companies will then, like this man who unlawfully occupied and sold off his neighbor's land, then these companies will claim that they've given X pounds to a food bank or Y pounds to this charity or that charity and so on. But that doesn't count. Usurping someone else's right and then claiming that you've done something good is not the Islamic idea of doing anything or doing something good. So we have to remember that. And sorry, I was just looking at the time to see we've gone slightly over the time. But then not only should the wealth and so on be acquired lawfully, but when you're going to spend it, then there are people who have prior rights, the first call, as you might call, on what you have. The first people who have a right to what you have are your parents. Chapter 2, verse 115. So when you want to spend, then first come your parents, spend on your parents. And then your children, and then your other relatives, and your neighbors, and so on and so forth. Other people. Islam granted neighbors so many rights, etc., that people got worried. And they went to the Holy Prophet Muhammad and they said, "O Prophet of Allah, is God going to make it incumbent upon us? Is God going to make it incumbent upon us to include our neighbors in our inheritance?" Again, this goes back to use of wealth. I'm using wealth, but I mean, please remember that khair isn't just wealth. It's anything that is pleasing. In fact, it'll interest you to know that a derivation of the word is used for for women who are beautiful and who also had good manners, etc., etc. And I guess the same thing could be used for men as well, and so on. So with that, I take my leave of you with the prayer that may Allah keep everyone safe and sound and free from harm. And I apologize that today it's not been as smooth as previously because we've been trying something new. So I've had to flick between things. Anyway, God willing, inshallah, we'll meet again tomorrow and we'll carry on from where we've left off today. Assalamu alaikum, Khuda Hafiz, and goodbye.